So, okay. Hi, Kendra. No
Hi,
worries.
Kendra.
Let us know when you can hear us with a thumbs up or what have you. Everyone on the recording, we're just kind of waiting a minute here to see if anyone else is going to join us, and then we'll dive right in.
I'm on a teeny phone. Um, you sent you sent me the link on a text, and I technologically very very weak, and I didn't know how to make that happen on my computer. So you're all on my little itty bitty
Oh,
mini phone.
that works. It works. Um, and I think Michelle, and I don't recall immediately if there's a way, if people don't want to be visible on the recording in any way, there's a way that I think we can um, have it record. I guess if that's a concern, I always like to check because some people don't necessarily want to appear on a recording or have their phone. If that's not an issue, I guess we won't worry about it. But I think there's a way to do that.
I don't
Mm,
have a problem with recording my voice.
Okay.
At least,
Okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
I'd
don't
just
have an
say,
issue either.
Okay.
right,
Great.
great, good, because I'm not quite sure how to do that or figure it out right now. All right. Well, I think we're going to go ahead and just get started. And this link was, available to folks to just join. Well, here comes Debs right now, so we'll go
Oh,
ahead and
awesome.
let Debs in, and we will start moving into our beginning here. Hi, Debs. Thanks for
Hi,
joining us.
Debs.
Um, well, thank you all for being here, taking some time on your Thursday. I'm Michelle Puckett. I am a social justice coach and facilitator and a poet, a fellow collaborator with the beloved Samantha Wallen. We've done NaPoWriMo, National Poetry Writing Month collaborations for 8 times, and with no end in sight. Um,
This is a
so
lifelong collaboration.
right? Yes, we've been writing together for over 20 years, even beyond putting stuff out publicly. Um, and so Sam's got her first book being published right now. Woo! Um, it's in pre-sale right now, and it is called Weight of Water. And we wanted to set up a time for Sam to get to share some of those poems and for us to just talk a little bit about kind of the intersection of where our collaborations come together around being active and aware, awake, um, living uh, people during these times and taking on um, the call to put our attention on the world as it is, both through poetry and through social justice work. So that's kind of what this time here together is about, and to have some conversation around. So um, I do want us to just do a real quick round of introductions. There's nothing super fancy we have to do. You can just say your name, anything that's useful for us to know. So some people like to say access needs or pronouns or anything that's just useful, but you don't have to. And it's up to what you want to do. And then the last thing is just why did you come today? What drew you to the conversation and to the sharing? So I'll go first. I've already said a lot of that, Michelle. I use she, her. The only access need that I have is just that you might see a cat. I'm cat sitting. You might see a cat come across the screen here. So be patient with the animals. Um, and I came here because I really respect and love Sam's voice and the work that has gone into this book and the work that that the poetry itself does in the world. I haven't gotten to see what this whole collection looks like yet because I haven't held it in my hands yet, but I think I've read and been a part of a lot of the creation of them, and I'm here to celebrate.
Mm.
I'll pass it to you, Debs.
Hi there. Can you see me? Now you can see me.
Yes.
First
Yes.
agree. Access needs may include a cat. I can hear one. I think she feels when Sam's vibe is because every time I get on a call with Sam, Lulu arrives. Um, I'm here because I too admire and am inspired deeply by all that Sam represents, both within her life and on paper. And I've ordered my copy of The
Thank
Weight of
you.
Water, and I'm very much looking forward to getting to know you better as well, Michelle, because I've followed you somewhat through NaPoWriMo.
Thanks, Debs.
Mm.
You want to pick who goes next?
I can't see anybody else. I can only see three of us.
Okay. Uh, well, why don't I pass it to Kendra then?
Hi, I'm Kendra. I'm she, her pronouns. And disclaimer, I am walking, so those are my access needs. And I actually am coming after getting to watch Sam's session with Janelle Hardy for the memoir writing workshop. So um, I'm just on her newsletter. I thought the event sounded interesting.
Mm. Great. Welcome. Thank you.
Thanks, Kendra. I'll have it passed then to Liza, and then we'll go to Sam.
Thank you. Because I'm on my little phone, my picture isn't there because I have to hold the phone up to have my picture there, and that's easier not to. But my relationship with poetry is I really like it when it comes to me. I'm not so good at going after it. So I
Mm.
have really enjoyed your collaboration and having it come to me each day when that's happening. And I'm looking forward to hearing Samantha's voice for the things that are coming because I really like hearing people's poetry when they say it aloud.
Mhm.
So that's why I'm here. Thank you.
Beautiful. Welcome.
Liza.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Well, my turn. I'm Sam, and well, I'm here because of my relationship with Michelle and our ongoing sense of collaboration, not only to write the work, which the majority of the poems that are in this collection did come from our collaboration, and because that continues outside, off the page and outside of our poetic collaboration, and that she and I are both thinking very deeply about how to um, support each other and be in relationship with others in support of our our work, and not just in a sense of affiliate promotions and things like that, but in a sense of true um, community and relationship, and the ways in which we find each other through each other. So and I'm here because Michelle wanted to support this book, and I really appreciate that, because on that other side of publication, there's a lot of other things that come up. I know I talk about this a lot in my work with other writers, and have experienced it in other ways through publications that I've done, but having this whole collection come together in a book, I'm feeling that other side of what it's like to really then stand behind it, and not do that part alone, though, too, that sense of the overwhelm of not only doing the work and getting it to publishing, but then bringing it out to the world in a wider way. And I think getting to do that in conversation and in spaces like this is really helpful, and thank you, Michelle, for that. And I'm just happy to be here with you, and thank you guys for coming, you all for coming. And access needs, I do tend to, I have a little bit of perimenopausal things and back stuff that was bothering me yesterday. So I tend to fidget in my seat a bit. So I'll just name that as part of my access needs here today.
Mhm. Mhm. Thanks, Sam.
Yeah.
And the last thing before we get into it is just, Sam and I talked before about how we wanted to structure this, and we want it to be conversational. So if something that Sam or I is saying is making bells and whistles go off in your head, and you've got something you want to throw in, come off mute or raise your hand. And join the conversation. This is just going to be bouncing questions. I've got a few questions for Sam. You guys can pose questions, and Sam will also read a couple of pieces as she feels led to as the conversation allows. So that's the structure. No particular time for questions or comments.
I just need to say I don't see on my phone how to mute. I'm used to doing Zoom on my computer.
Hmm.
So I'm not muted, and I hope that doesn't end up being a problem.
It's great.
Okay. Yeah, if we start hearing some background noise because I'm the host here, I can mute you, and I'll do that if I need to.
That would be perfect, Michelle. Thank
Yeah,
you.
great. All righty. Well, Sammy, as I like to call her.
You're the only one I let call me Sammy.
Oh, I
You
didn't
know
know.
what's funny? I call myself Sammy, and I didn't realize it until I talked to myself, and I'm like, all right, Sammy, and I'm like, okay, wait, it's you and me that call me Sammy, and that's about it.
I had no idea.
It's a privilege you hold, Michelle.
My goodness. I like it. I love giving nicknames. All right. Well, Sam, I wanted to think a little bit and hear you name like kind of what it was like for you to kind of go through these years of collaboration, and not all the poems come out of collaboration, like what it was like for you to weave together this particular excuse me, compilation of
Yeah.
poetry.
Yeah. Well, as we've discussed over the years, well, it's funny. I'll say this first because this I think happens to a lot of people and a lot of writers, and it's just one of those things you have to contend with where as I've thought about doing a book in a collection, which I've always wanted to do and just hadn't really oriented as fully around that because I'd worked on a memoir before and worked more on a nonfiction book around the writing process, which I'm still working on that. Um, and then when it came to poetry, I always had it in my mind that I need to write new work to put together into a collection, like with an intentional, like I am going to write these poems for a collection for publication. And I don't know what woke me out of that. I think it was, a couple, two or three falls ago, like 2 years ago, I was like, I'm just going to print out all the poetry that I have and see what's there and then look at it. And I think I had 183 pages of work. And I was like, oh, like some switch flipped in terms of realizing that I have a lot of work here and I can make a collection out of this and don't have to begin again and have some new intentional project. And I like to mention that because I think we can get caught in that. It's like there isn't time to sort of stop and take in what we've done and to acknowledge and to celebrate and to stand with that. And so that then emerged into I wanted to do a bigger collection that had it ended up I was moving in the direction of having a collection that had three different sections, and it was getting a little overwhelming to make decisions about that and how it was all fitting together. And it just wasn't quite gelling. And I realized I was like, okay, I don't really want to get in my own way. And I definitely have some perfectionist tendencies. I have some of that, control issues and all the things. And I was like, why don't you back off and maybe one of these sections becomes its own and I do it separately as three different chapbooks, which essentially is what the one coming out is considered a chapbook because it's under 30 pages. So I started to do that with each of the sections, and they weren't quite holding together, and it just wasn't coming. And so I just let it go for a little bit, and then came back, and I was like, what poems really speak to me? And as I was reading through, um, kind of this condensed pile I'd made, I was like, there's a theme of water here. And there was also some themes of water just coming up in my life at the time of putting this collection together. And I decided to let that be sort of the magnetic center, if you will. And not every poem is about that, but the ones that were came forward a little more fully, and I just went with it. And it was a process then of really stepping back and listening to the conversation of the poems in them. And it actually helped having a smaller limitation, um, because I was like, okay, I'm not going to do more than this many poems for a chapbook. And so I had to really listen to like what poems were calling, what ones seemed to be in conversation with each other. And that's really how this collection came together. And it covers, I mean, each there are ones that I think cover each of those larger that larger collection sections, but it's just not quite oriented in the same way. But they all have that sort of taste, which comes from that direct relationship to the natural world, um, that relationship to my daily or ordinary. Because one of my sections was called "Becoming Ordinary," and it was a lot of the poems that we had um, done during the lockdown of the pandemic, and the sense of maintenance. And my attention was really, all of our attention for the most part was really centered around our domestic kind of day to day, what keeps the world spinning in our lives. So anyway, there's a little bit of that flavor in here, but the orientation just was a little different in terms of um, which ones made the final version that's became this collection, which was a kind of surprise to see for myself too, of like what were the ones that landed, and again we're sort of in conversation with each other. They just felt like a resonant line across them. Yeah.
Love that. Yeah, conversation, I mean collaboration, call and response, that's exactly like the form that you and I have used to talk to each other across these years, and choosing the source texts that we choose, and working with those. And it makes me think about kind of the call and response that we're doing in this call of like your work and my work in the world. But you also have taught classes in, race, class, and gender, social justice themed work as well. And I just wonder how all of that informs. Like, can you talk about the call and response of so much of what we've grappled with in our writing around issues of justice and climate change and um, feminism, all of those sorts of things, and how you think of collaboration informing the Venn diagram of where poetry and social justice overlap.
Yeah, well, that's a big question. Yeah, I think what I'll say about that is one of the things that really became evident to me doing teaching social justice classes and work. And it was at a time also when it wasn't quite as much in the larger social conversation the way that it has been, and is now, although that's now changing yet again. Um, And the thing, after I stepped away from teaching directly, teaching those classes that were required freshman seminars at Naropa University, and then stepped back into my life of like, how is this alive in my life still? I realized, and one of the things within the work that I realized in teaching those classes is that the hardest part was contending with that emotional relationship and personal relationship to contending with how these things are alive within our own lives. Um, and I'd even gone so far as within my coaching work to move in the direction of starting to put together a class on white privilege and wanting to work with it at the level of um, the emotional feeling level, because so much, there's you have to take in a certain amount of intellectual information to really orient around the frameworks of social justice work. But then the piece that I was interested in is how do we drop that more fully into our bodies and contend with the emotional pain and the emotional resistance and just all of those sorts of things. So I think for me then, in not being a teacher and facilitator of that, I was like, well, I certainly want to be oriented around that in my poetry, in my creative work, because for me, poetry, as is listed in my bio for this book, is a form of lucid living, a kind of awakeness to oneself and to the world and that relationship um, between, what, and that's vast, obviously, but I think it's, in many of the topics that we chose we weren't just maybe picking the, you know, social justice topic of the day per se. We were choosing things that felt resonant to our lives and what we're grappling with and what we've been contending with. And I think that's how I approach the poems too. And that's why this collection, I think in particular, really centers more for me around climate justice, environmental justice in a way. And it goes beyond that for me because it's also a sense of the relationship, the severed relationship that I have to both my lineage and ancestors and my own indigenous culture, as well as just to which coincides with a disconnection from land and the more than human world. And honestly, and there's probably a lot of different ways I could, go down different paths to unpack this a little bit more, but at a certain level, I really see that severing as being the foundational severing to the rest of the injustices in the world. When we're disconnected from a sense of our own belonging. And then not only that, the ways in which humans are the dominant central element in most of the ways that consciousness works in our culture and society. And they're, this dominance of human and the human-centered thinking that disregards the rest of human of living sentient life.
Mm.
And so for me, that to me is a foundational because I know for me, I've thought about so much of my own struggles come from a sense of not knowing how to be connected, not only to other people, which is an aspect of that. I spoke to that in the piece that I shared in your newsletter of this kind of individual exceptionalism and this sense of like needing to be the one who can hold yourself up by your bootstraps and do the thing. So there's that aspect of relationship, but it's also things that's been deeply important to me is like, how do I even be in relationship to the more than human world in a way that actually is of service and isn't just centered around my own needs?
Mm, mhm,
um, there's a lot there, so I feel like I'm talking
mhm,
a little bit in circles because it's kind of hard to say. But this collection, I think, centers a lot around that in the poems that are there. Um, and I know that my intention with all of my work and in the realm of what my mentor Dina Metzger calls the literature of restoration, it is to work towards decentering just the human perspective
mhm,
as the central most
mm,
important perspective.
mm,
I don't
mhm,
know if my poems yet, I don't know that I've really reached the level at which I would like to in that regard, but that's what my this work and my work with you and all of my
mm,
poetry is striving for. And I
mhm,
think that helps. I mean, that's part of what dismantles a sense of like domination
mm,
mindset
mhm,
and culture,
mm.
which everything stems from that.
Yeah, beautifully put. I wonder if it would be a good time to bring in a piece
That's what
here.
I was thinking.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I think the one that's calling to me is called Blue Whale,
Mm,
and I'll read it first and then maybe say a little bit about it.
mhm,
Well, there's maybe two. Maybe I'll read two pieces here. And I'll give a sneak peek here at my sister is a visual artist, and I um, had her contribute some images to go in the book. So there's
mm,
some images. I'll just show this one today, but I love it, and it kind of coincides. It's a
mm.
blue
Mhm.
whale, so it kind of coincides
Right.
with
Gorgeous.
Nice.
this this photo, or I mean this poem. Um, okay, so blue whale after Eva Hooker. This is just a poem done in this similar style to what she did with dragonflies, actually.
Mm,
If polar waters, if memory tracks, shifting hotspots, if equatorial water winter, if dinner plate size aorta, if 400-pound heart, if buoyant, if heard miles away, if he follows, if she chooses, if they circle, if rolling underwater, if a sudden flying upwards, if thrust, if multiple folds open, if love, if sublime, if she is a fibrous scar of ovulation, if sperm, if placenta, if 1 inch growth per day, if rostrum tip to tail notch, if 12 feet in 7 months, if no harpoon gun, if no fishing gear entanglements, if born tail first, if broad flat head, if calf nudges, if a nipple protrudes, if milk, if wean, if baleen plates, if keratin sieve, if lunge feed, if 6 tons of krill a day, if no ship strikes, if pale underside yellow coat diadems, if barnacles, if throat pleats expand, if frequency, if song louder than any other on the planet, if no drilling, if no construction, if no human made ocean noise, if no stress response, if slender fluke, if columnar spray, if breath seen 30 feet in the air, then Antarctic blue, Chilean blue, northern blue, pygmy blue, if water carries our weight. So, yeah, what I wanted to say about that one is when I wrote that, I was present to it, and just feeling this sense of the whole what it takes for for a whale to survive, um, which is pretty phenomenal, and that they do, and that they hear, and that they exist, and that there was plentiful um, whale beings here for millions of years,
mm,
and
mm,
now they're threatened. I have another whale poem actually in this collection, but something happened after long after I had written this, and when I'd after I'd put the collection together, and I think I'd sent it out already to a few different publishers, and I had an opportunity. I was on a retreat, and I was sitting there during kind of a time that we had, and I was reading through this collection again to just see how it felt. And when I read this poem, I had a whole different experience that just made me weep, and I felt this connection to whales in a way that I just had. Whales have always been something I've loved, but I don't know. There was a kind of very visceral connection and acknowledgement of them as beings that I hadn't experienced even when I wrote the poem,
mm,
or even when I put it in the collection. And then when I read it this time, it was almost like I didn't write the poem. And if speaking of collaboration, it was like there was a kind of a collaborative engagement with this species, with these
mm,
beings,
mm, mm,
that I got to feel in a way that I hadn't. And it surprised me because in that way, the poem was no longer mine.
mm,
Um, it was a kind of a communal conversation that brought their sentience even closer to me in a way that I was even surprised about.
Mm.
um, which was lovely. This is the beautiful thing about what writing does. I mean, and oftentimes I know this is true with so many of the writers I support. You write something and you leave it for a while, and you come back and you look at it again, and you're almost like, wow, who wrote that? And this wasn't even that. Like I've had that with a few poems where I'm like, okay, that's not so bad. That's pretty good. Like, okay. Um, but this one, there was something else happened where the spirit of the whale and the power of their sentience came through in a way that I just like blew me away. And I bawled for like a little while because
mm,
it came in. And that's back to answering your social justice question a little bit
mm,
too, is like I've lived in my head a lot of my life, and it's been a beautiful place. I love it for many reasons. It serves other people better than it serves myself. And
mm,
but I can get lost in there, and it's how to bring that deep into the body. And I think that's what poetry can do in ways that other things can't. And even a poem I wrote did that for me
mm,
and surprised the heck out of me
mm, mm,
in that way.
mm,
So I'll
mm.
It,
just I'll pause there.
I don't know if you have me muted.
No, you're not muted.
Okay.
Go,
I
Liza.
was just going to say it's not directly mind to body, it's mind to heart.
Mm, mm,
And that opens us, and it's what you're really sharing with others. And I appreciate it. I also want to say I have had blue whales much on my mind
mm,
recently, and I had this thought, which is not actually an action thought, even though it sounds like it. It's just a thought, which was when I read about the problems blue whales are having. I'm like, I'm going to get a tattoo so I can live with them while they're
mm,
struggling with this. And I have no tattoos, and it's very unlikely that I'm going to get a tattoo. But your sentiment of allowing that being in made me think of that. It's lovely.
Mm.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, lovely. Hot, cold here. So,
yes, honey.
excuse me.
Perimenopause in the house.
Yep, yep, yep.
Well, some of what Liza was speaking to and what you brought out from that poem is reminding me of another question that I have here, and I wanted to bring in a little bit of the work of Bayo Komalafe, who whose book was the first book that you and I did chose as a source text for our first NaPoWriMo collaboration. So I thought that was nice and full circle. I was just in conversation with a couple of witchy writer friends yesterday around this piece and feeling very comforted by it and very instructed by it. Um, and he speaks so very much about this thing of decentering the human supremacy, and um, being more clear-sighted about how agential the universe is that we exist in, and how small we are in that. So, you said in the piece that you wrote, the guest post that you wrote on my newsletter, you spoke about not rushing to catharsis and not rushing to draining the feelings of sorrow and guilt and all of the things, complicity that we feel when we look at what's happening to blue whales, and on and on and on to humans, who are under the thumb of so much oppressive forces. And so, um, this this piece, I wanted you to speak more about why not to rush to catharsis. That's a hard thing, I think, during these times. And so I just always also wanted to frame that with a little bit from bio, because I think it's in great conversation and collaboration with what you're bringing up here. And he says from this essay, which is on practicality. uh, and the urging people to just do something, just get up and do something, which, you'd think maybe a social justice coach might be telling you that, but I think that there's some nuance in here that is so useful. He says, when the cracks do not ask to be mended, but to be noticed, when the grief is not a prelude to repair, but a depth in its own right, then what? Then the pragmatist's tools fall silent, the hammer quivers, the blueprint curls at the edges, the metrics grow unreadable, and the soul that once bore the weight of action proudly, stoically begins to feel its own exile.
Mm.
Later in that same piece, he talks about becoming available to this moment. He says, and in that availability, something else begins to stir. Something churns that is not the deed, but the dance. Something moves that is not the fix, but the fissure. Something weeps that is not the solution, but the trembling. Something sibilant sighs stern songs softly. To be available now is not to be ready for deployment. It is to be ready to be undone.
Mm.
To be available now is to open to the crack, not as a place of failure, but of fecundity.
Whew. Bio. He can bring it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It's beautiful. Yeah. So you're asking me to speak to that, you know, aspect and that idea of catharsis, because yeah, he's absolutely inviting that, I think, in what he says right there. And this is, you know, our most recent collaboration with Norma Wong's book, which of course in my perimenopausal brain the title slipped out of my mind at the moment, but
When no thing works.
yeah, when no thing works. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think I'll speak from my own experience first, that I know part of my own way of being, as well as a survival mechanism throughout my life around being with a chronically ill mother who is also a suicidal mother, and various other things, aspects of my childhood, which had a lot of instability. My I love to, and it was helpful to constantly be making meaning and to be reorienting to a framework of positivity or possibility. And I
Mm.
naturally do this. And I like that. I don't want that to go away by any means. But I've also recognized the ways in which it hinders my ability again to let things truly come in, to really have an intimacy with others and with my life in a way that I crave and want, and yet can't always figure out how to do. And I think it was Yuki Roshi. I'm not sure if I'm attributing that right, but there's a quote that like enlightenment is intimacy with everything.
Hmm. Mm.
And to me, I think one of the bigger aspects of our cultural framework and our cultural myths even is the hero myth. And I think a lot about this. I write a lot about this. I follow people. One of the writers we did a Sharon Blackie book for one of our collaborations on Haggitude. And she speaks to this a lot too, of kind of the post-heroic journey. Um, and in terms of the idea of the hero, I think so much of what Bio is speaking to in that quote, and so much of what we get through just our culture from Marvel movies and um, even within the realm of social justice and environmental justice and altruism, there's an idea that we have to, if we're not out saving the world, we're not doing anything. And I know it's a weird fine line that we need to be aware and active and engaged in our lives, and we do need to be taking action in certain ways. But I think this grand, and this is built in as a coach being in the coaching industry for the last 10 years, and you probably are familiar with this too, that there's so much around epic impact, massive influence, um, just the kind of scale and pressure that comes with who we need to be. And ultimately, I think that stems from capitalism,
Yeah.
of like a an ideal held up here that you need to keep striving to be better towards, and you're not enough until you buy this program or you buy this thing or you do this thing or you're out there. It's just part of the consciousness of our culture that's so deep that I think to even see it like privilege or other things, that it's the water we live in, and to then have to consciously look at and understand that water is difficult to do, to begin to, as you said, be undone, rather than feel like we have to be the fixers of everything. And so, I mean, it's something I think about a lot because I want to be of service.
Mhm.
I want my work to be of service. I want that in the world. And I also recognize that I've suffered in my own way of being and probably been limited in my capacity to actually show up for other people and show up to the world in the ways that I like, because of an internalized sense of unworthiness that's in comparison to being some kind of hero that hasn't done enough. And what I think I was really surprised by this, the idea of catharsis in particular. I watched a book reading and an interview with Ocean Vuong when he was doing a reading for his new book, The Emperor of Gladness, where he basically said, and I don't want to be a spoiler for the book, I don't think it will fully spoil the book, but he's like, there's no catharsis in this book. Like, the characters do not change. He's kind of gave a glimpse of basically a fentanyl kind of opioid addicted community, and centered on one individual who basically, the opening chapter, so this isn't really a spoiler, he's going to kill himself, and basically something, a piece of laundry blows by, and it catches his attention because a woman's out hanging laundry, and he for a moment is like, oh wait, your sheets, and it pulls him out of getting ready to jump off this bridge. And then it's the story proceeds from there in terms of it wasn't that he made a choice to live per se. He actually impulsively reacted to help someone else in this very mundane, ordinary moment. And the rest of the story he talks about unfolding as what is it like to then to live and be in community and in connection without anything changing, and the ways in which we show up to each other and our lives and do acts of kindness or give or do the thing, and doing that knowing that it's not going to change the circumstances of the larger situation for people, and we do that anyway. And I think that's what bio's inviting us to step into more deeply. And when Ocean was talked about that, and this was what I was surprised by, which I didn't know, and I put this in the piece, but that basically, in ancient Greece with Aristotle's embrace of catharsis, I think, so Plato had been his teacher. Aristotle was a student of Plato, and Plato had banished poets because he feared they would stir too much emotion and weaken the military. Um, Aristotle, as a student, then agreed with that, but he went further to enact. That's where we get the three-part play, which has that set up conflict and resolution. And they specifically talked about and acknowledged that it was to create predictable emotional arcs that would drain the abscess of public unrest. So it was intentionally built into the art structure as a means of maintaining control. And Ocean talked about this too, of like when we watch, he's like, great, all these shows now that we have. And if you notice, and I'm a big TV watcher, I find it very comforting. My mother bought me a TV for my 4th birthday, and I had a TV in my room. And so I admit fully that I love television. And also, I recognize that a massive amount of the setups and narratives involve ultra wealthy people. And even thinking of shows like Succession, for example, and Ocean talked about this, it's like those are even narratives that orient us around creating a sense of sympathy for the ultra wealthy, and a sympathy for the plights of their life, and that's part of our entertainment. And in this sense, it's also part of what keeps us away from maybe acting in different ways around our own capacity to change things, even in the small ways that we do and can, because it satisfies us in a certain way through these storytelling narratives and through art. So art can be used in a lot of different ways. So anyway, there's a lot to unpack there, and I just find it fascinating. And I think for me, there's a poem that pops up that maybe I'll read now, but that I really am interested in how to, step out of my need to actually be a hero and to actually be more present in my life to the things that are around me that do need my attention, and my intention alone can be a epic, um, impactful, mega influential thing that doesn't have to look the way we think it does, in the larger culture. So, yeah, I don't know, any comments or questions on that, but I'll share a poem while I'm finding it. But I'd love to hear if there's any other thoughts about that or comments.
I would just say I never knew how to say Ocean's last name. I always say Vyong, and I guess that's wrong. But I'm reading that book, and he is a poet, and the language. I mean, for me, the poets have a capacity with language that I don't have, even though I use words. And his ability to communicate the depth of relationship and the depth of internal experience in a way that most of the time when other people do it, I find so overwhelming that I close the book.
Mm,
So
Mm, mm,
that capacity to be with, just like the blue whales, to be with grief, to be with hard things, to be with um, sorrow, to be with what seems impossible, and to be with it. And I think that's what Bayo's talking about too.
mhm,
To be able to be with it. Um, yeah. Thank you for your poetry.
mhm,
yeah.
mhm.
Thank you. Yeah.
I have a thought too, just around the work that I'm always trying to do, the work that I do both as a poet and also as a social justice coach and facilitator. People, someone who leads groups of people and individuals who feel a call and a struggle to, how do I show up? How do I um, be of service? I think is a lot of the way that people come to it, a calling in that way, but also just when you get down to it, how do I feel all these things, like what Liza's saying or what you said around um, enlightenment being intimate with all that is. Like, how do I not close off these parts of myself? And so I think that's a lot of what I guide people around, and I am equipped and qualified to do it because I am on that path with them. Oh Lord. And just the struggle being perimenopausal, being a woman who's in a world where, my family's apartment just burned down, like I'm walking with somebody who's coming to the end of her life and just like really facing death, like all the things while, we've got uh, ice agents rappelling down the apartment complexes of, folks and zip tying children. How do we be in all that? And I think that there is this real compulsion that is born out of capitalism, as you named, and before that colonization, before that divine right of kings, like um, uh, putting some people up and some people down, and aiming for that big impact. But I think it's so easy to think that that's what it means to do social justice. And then right now, we who lost this last election, we who, tried to prevent a Trump 2.0, are having to sit with what is not translating to help our our ranks grow, what is not translating in the worldview that we're offering. And I think there's something here about this thing of
Mm,
being with and
hmm hmm
not being above. And it's a hard pill to swallow. It's a very hard thing for me to think about and to engage with in the wake of what happened with Charlie Kirk's assassination and all the ugliness that happened in our country around that and around the world. And um, I think it's a tough thing for us to look at our own selves, we who purport to, believe in a world where we don't have to have these kind of assassinations and where we don't have to have the repelling and all of that. For us to look at where are we not meeting the moment too. And I think the
hmm
answer is a lot in these gestures of being mature and big and wide enough to not rush to the catharsis. I think poetry is one of the ways we can do that. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And it is difficult to do that.
mhm,
To not want to rush to something that feels better. Oh, Debs, I see you have your hand up. So yeah, let's
mhm,
hear from you, Debs.
Oh, I'd like to talk about quite a lot of things, but I'm going to try and centralize my contribution around catharsis.
mhm,
Sam recently gave me some feedback on a piece that I'd written, and the piece that was the most important thing that she gave me was not to rush to catharsis. And as soon as I looked at the piece, I felt the insincerity that of myself when I was writing it, like looking for the happy ending. And as I reflected on this, and I have been doing over the days, and it's been fascinating to hear the conversation that's evolved. I recognize the enculturation. Oh, always look for a happy ending. Don't talk about bad things. Say something nice. If you can't say anything, don't say anything at all. Everything will be all right. It's fine. You're not allowed to have your feelings, and you're not allowed to bring those things into this place, whether that's the family, the school, whatever. And so as I was musing on that, I realized that in that sense, I'd developed a skill, for want of a better word, or certainly a quality of, it's my job to do that. It's my job to bring this, take this pain away as much as possible, having revealed it in myself at least. And I thought, damn, that's condescending,
Mm,
and it's controlling.
Mhm.
And also, it's an intervention, because if we don't get to feel, those of us that want to feel, all we can feel, we will make different decisions. That flow of energy, however we qualify it, whatever name we choose to give those multiple frequencies that we can feel, I think at one level is part of being here. It's part of being an entire human, is to know how it feels. And then, as an evolving species, I would love to think that that helps to guide us, gives us a better reference point for the consequences of feeling those things, and the genesis of where we created those events that created those emotions. It's kind of a built-in thing, isn't it? And when we seek to truncate it, the happy clappy ending, we're not telling the truth.
mm,
And anyway, that's my contribution on
mhm,
condescension. But I also just wanted to end with, I realized that we're trying to satisfy something in us. You know, I say I in others. I hope they're satisfied with, my nice, tidy conclusion. And satisfaction, as you'll know, comes from the Latin satis, meaning enough. So let's give you enough that you can go away with this sense of not having to feel more.
mhm,
And yet, what could be said to be one of the great works of any art is to leave us feeling and make a decision ourselves how we use that information.
mm, mm. Yeah,
Beautiful.
yeah. Hmm. Hmm.
Thank you, Debs.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, Sam, I'm looking here at the time, and we don't have to be totally crispy, but I think it would be so sweet to go out on some poetry.
Okay.
Hear your voice a little more here.
Okay. Well, I pulled out one that came from this kind of place of what this last bit of but what we've been diving into in this last bit around catharsis and Bayo's quote and all of that. So it might be it'd be a good place to end, I think. And this poem did come from our riparian collaboration a couple years ago, and it also then appeared in a Dark Mountain Project publication called The Eight Fires. And so I'll share this one here as we close. It's called A Larger Logic. How might we disappear willingly? Be broken eggshell, so scattered there's no way to continue to place ourselves at the center. How might we disappear willingly? Be crude oil bird wing, so tarred we cannot take flight and own the sky. How might we disappear willingly? Be sea hare poisoned, so extinct there's no memory of our clever designs many generations from now. how might we go completely sentient? Be a larger logic, great blue heron, aplomb in the glitter of pickleweed inlet. Be fine sediment, so sensitive, every depression reshapes us. Be reduced by all this thought of saving everything so we can be heroes. There will be an ending that vanishes us. I tried to disappear today, willingly walking the shoreline, curious as sunlight how to be air to cloud and wind, leave no persistent imprint.
Lovely, Sam.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming today. It was really sweet to hear your voices, even for a moment. And we send our love and our poetry and our hearts collectively out to everyone who listens to the recording. Our energy is not separated by time and space. Um, and just a final plug here, Sam's book is called Weight of Water. It is out on Finishing Line Press. It is in pre-order with a discount until November 21st. And the amount of pre-sales are really impactful on how the book comes out, on what Sam gets paid for it and how many issues get run. So do order, gift some if you can. And thank you, Poet. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for your big heart. And hope everyone has a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for being here. And thanks, Michelle, for holding this space and supporting my book and our work, all of our work here together. So, yeah, thank you.
Great to connect.
Absolutely.
I put the link to if anyone needs in the chat. Make it easy.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Sam.
Hi, Lisa and Kendra as well. Love from England.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye,
Good to
Michelle.
be with you. Bye.
Bye.
All right.